Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Greetings and welcome to yet another edition of Unplugged. Now, this May, we decided to do something different. We generally look at growing businesses, the regular businesses, but we decided to go into the creative economy, dip our toes into the waters of the creative economy. And it was really an eye opener. It's been an eye opener. It's a very broad and vibrant part of the economy. And we started with the world of film movie making. That's a big thing for us in Africa. Um, we themed it lights, camera, and action, and we wanted to just do a peep into the film industry in Nigeria. And oh boy, we discovered there's so many moving parts. We've had guests who have shone the light on areas like production, what production involves, what you can do to be a producer. We've had how do I call it, master classes or boot camps. Yeah, I think more of boot camps about what it's the history of Nollywood, what the different parts that different people play. We've had an actor last week. We had an actor, Elma, who told us, Elma Mbadiwe Dada, who told us a whole lot about what it means to be an actor. What do these things involve? What are the show parts and what are the business parts of these activities? What's the future for professionals in this area? How can we push the boundaries forward? And one very interesting nugget that still resonates with us here, we still talk about it, but it resonates with me a lot, is that the film industry is a nexus where the different creative expressions meet. There's storytelling, there's arts, there's poetry, there's fashion, there's lighting, there's sound, there's acting, there's branding, there's marketing, there's even food, you know. There's so many parts of it. And we've heard that it practically takes a small village to put out a movie. So what happens after the movie is made? It's an almost Herculean task to make a movie. So after this Herculean feat gets done, how does it get before an audience? This is where we have film festivals like AFRIF that come into play. And today we are honored to have as our guest the program director of AFRIF, Ikenna Ezerionha. And I tell you guys, I did rehearse that with him several times. So Ikenna, I hope I did justice to your name.
You tried. You tried.
I tried.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a little bit about Ikenna and we'll get to chatting. Ikenna is a fine and applied arts graduate. He's a management executive and is the creative with over 2 decades of experience working in different arts of the creative economy. He's presently the program director of AFRIF, which stands for the Africa International Film Festival, and is one of Africa's biggest annual film festivals, film events. And interestingly, you started about almost 13 years ago in Port Harcourt.
Yes, yes. Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. AFRIF did start in Port Harcourt in 2010, yes.
So you're welcome to Unplugged, and thank you for accepting our invitation to share your journey and your knowledge with us.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So for those who don't have the inside track on the film industry, like many of us, we just sit down in our homes or in the movies, theater, and enjoy what has been created. What is AFRIF about? I think we have a glitch. Let me see. It's a network glitch. I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch. Please hold on. I'm just going to switch and see. Okay, we're back now. We had a network glitch from here. It's I think it's getting to that season when there are glitches in the network, and it's getting
Yeah,
to that. Yes,
yeah.
So please just tell us, could you just repeat what you said? And sorry we missed that. For those of us who don't have the inside track, what is AFRIF all about?
Okay. So AFRIF, as we fondly call the Africa International Film Festival, is really an international showcase, where we celebrate films, and filmmakers and young talents who are doing all the work in the film industry across Africa and the African diaspora.
Okay, so you reach as far as the diaspora.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Because as Africans, we do have quite a few relatives across the divide, and a lot of them are doing a lot of really, really interesting and impactful work. So when you're really trying to do what we're trying to do, it's important that their voices are represented as well.
Okay. But when you speak about voices, this month is International Women's Month. It's actually rounding up tomorrow. Do you also make a specific special efforts to have a gender
Yeah.
representation in voices?
Yes, interestingly, our founder is a woman, and the AFRIF executive board and team are mostly made up of women. So, there's a lot of consciousness, a lot of, even in the local industry, some of the biggest producers are women, and a lot of content deal with issues around, even our sponsors are interested in, issues that are surrounding women, empowerment and female empowerment, gender equality, and various social justice, issues surrounding women. So a lot of in our past editions, we have dealt with themes that deliberately speak to women.
Now that's interesting because I have I've talked to a few people in the film industry. I don't know too many, but I've talked to a few, and I tell them that what I tend to see are those stereotypes and archetypes of women: the evil mother-in-law, the evil stepmother, the desperate to marry a young girl. The corporate woman who is vilified for being corporate. And I'm just wondering, where do these stories come from? Do they really reflect Africa today? I don't know. I know you don't make the movies, but I'd like to have your opinion on that.
Yes, you also you have to understand some of the history in Nollywood, and how the industry has grown to this level. There was a lot of representation of stories like that in our past, coming, but Nollywood is over 20 years now. So there is a lot of shift in even the subject matter of the kind of subjects that are being dealt with. I mean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I can
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, it's just one of those network glitches as
Yes.
well. So a lot of the TV dramas that we see are built around all those kind of subjects, and home drama. I mean, our industry is dominated by drama, but a lot of it is really for TV. People don't understand that film work is different from television work. So nowadays, if you do follow the film industry, the subjects are really very diverse. a lot of empowered women, a lot of stories that, there's a new Africa, so it's not no longer the Africa of poverty, of strife, of, there's a new narrative. There are a lot of young people who are making money, living the life, so stories definitely are changing.
Okay, they're reflecting more
It's
of,
reflecting that.
yeah, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Do you also look at documentaries in Afrif? Do you
Yes,
review?
definitely.
Okay,
Yeah. The documentary section is one of our feature focuses. It's part of the big part of the work that we do. Aside the categories that we have for feature film, for documentaries, for short films, for animation, and for student short films.
okay,
Because part of our philosophy or vision is really to kind of help develop the industry. So there's a focus on students and growing young people, so that is built into the free fabric. So we have trainings and things like that for young people and things like that. So yeah.
I'll come back to the training, but let's talk a little bit about your own journey into this space. You're a fine artist and then you're a
Yes.
management executive. How did you segue into the world of film to the point of becoming a program
Well,
director?
yeah, I really started in the IT business. You know, um, my journey was in graphics in an IT company, building interface, what they call the user interface these days, UI,
Okay.
UX, and things like that. We were part of the pioneers back in the day, but that led me into advertising. So I was an art director in advertising for a while, struck out on my own, did a lot of work for small companies in branding, basically designing websites, brochures, all sorts of, materials for their, corporate outlook. Then that led me into merchandising. Merchandising are things like corporate gifts and, the merchandise that big companies produced for their consumer market, and in merchandising, part of the business that we were into was, events and events marketing. So that was how I ventured into the events. For a while, worked in events, and the fifth project came as an event. I was a project manager in an events company, and Afrif was not my first project, but was one of my projects to develop at the time. And we started in Port Harcourt, and eventually it grew to become its.
We lost the last part of what you said. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we lost the last part after you said Port Harcourt.
Yes. So we started in Port Harcourt, and eventually Afrif grew and became its own thing. So that's how I left event. I'm still in. I mean, Afrif being an event, I'm still in the business, but Afrif is big enough to be its own thing these days. Yeah.
So what do you do as a program director in an organization like AFRIF?
Okay, so as a program director, my job is to plan. For instance, every year we plan the theme, and that theme really now kind of just uh, dovetails into the film program, what films that we're going to select for the year, what our industry program is going to be speaking to, because we nowadays will have a very different industry program. So how does that theme, what does it break into? What smaller areas and subjects are you going to be dealing with? Like this year, we're talking about indigenous to global 2.0.
Okay.
2.0 is our second version of this. Last year, we did do the theme was indigenous to global as well. But this year, we are really settling on this subject and really kind of blowing it up and examining it further. How our stories can be global. How our films can go global and connect with industries abroad. So that's the theme for this year. So my job is to now break it down into the film selection, the program for the industry, then the training program as well for young people.
It sounds like a whole lot of work, but I'm really very curious about this indigenous to global theme. I'm excited about this theme, because I always believe that if I don't tell you my story and you tell me my story, it can only be a one-sided story and it's from your own perspective, So are we going to
Yeah.
maybe you
Yeah.
could tell me about last year because you've already done it. What kind of movies, what kind of films, even documentaries came through, generally speaking? Because I tell you one thing, I find it very difficult to have a Nigerian movie and people are speaking through their noses. I know unless it requires that, but you can't be in a village setting and you're speaking in a certain way,
Exactly.
So,
Back in the day, those were the things that filmmakers felt they needed to do to be able to sell the product. But nowadays it's become interesting because, if you look at the rules for the Oscars, and Nigeria nowadays has an Oscar committee, so our films are being
yeah.
considered in that foreign language category. And it tells you that whatever film that will come in there will be 52% local language. So when you've been given that kind of rule, you have all the rule now. So your film can actually be 100% local language. It can, and it can travel because you can subtitle, you can, there are language dub these days in markets where they don't do well with subtitles, so the technology and things that we can do with editing has helped, so you are free to tell your story in your language and be as authentic as possible because the authenticity really does help the story at the end of the day. So that's speaking to that indigenous part of building your film.
Let me share something that happened to me yesterday. It has nothing to do with film, but just let me just share it because that was when I realized that as cosmopolitan as I think I am a true native African, maybe
Yes.
Nigerian. A young lady called me and from a group, a women's group I belong to, and she just said, "Hello, is this so 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 so? I'm so 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 so." I'm like, "Hello, who did you call?" you know, and she was taken aback. I said, "No, no, do you know who you called?" Not, I didn't ask the position. I just felt like, because if I pick up the phone and call you, my first thing would be to say, "Hello, is this Mr. Ikenna?"
Yes.
Because that for me, that is an African thing, to just,
Right.
the next thing she was probably going to call me Julia. I said, "Okay, hold on a minute. I need to talk to your boss." So I called the boss. I said, "Who is this person that's I said, I don't need her to call me madam. I just need her to call, is this Mrs. Jacks? Not hello. Come on, give her a script to write, to follow, So that is when
Yes.
I realized that, oh my goodness, Africa is really in my blood,
Yes.
is in my
Yes.
blood, you know.
Interestingly, what you're saying, I'll give you an example of what's happening today. On social media, if you're in the film circle on social media, there's a debate going on today, from about a couple of days ago. There's a film called The Trade that was released on Amazon Amazon is there now, so people are watching Prime Video. Yeah, just about some kidnapper, Igbo, possibly story is, is I think his origins are from Anambra. And the debates all through Twitter yesterday has been that his Igbo has been, it's not authentic. He's, the L factor, what we call the L factor, the R factor.
Yeah, yeah.
Anambra born, trader type person who mixes up those tenses. That's the kind of character that's leading this film. And people are arguing that, this guy in the film is supposed to be from Imo. Why is he mixing up his L's and his R's? And they do point. You understand? So perception and discernment for the audience is that heightened nowadays that you have a film that is in Igbo. The lead character is an Igbo protagonist. And people are complaining that his L and R, intonation, his speech was forced, that it wasn't natural, and for me, that, it kind of blew my mind last night when I saw it, because it was one of the female directors, and the big female directors was kind of having that conversation on Twitter and saying, okay, why do you guys have a problem with this? It's a brilliant film. A lot of people are going to see the film, but people are complaining about. So you see that as an audience that we have matured.
Yes.
To the level where if you give Igbo in a film, it has to be authentically Igbo. If you give us Yoruba, don't give us somebody who's going to come and force the Yoruba. If you give us any language, the audience has matured. So that's what we mean by indigenous, being authentic to your story, and so that it's not the acting is not forced. So that's how evolved the film industry is nowadays.
I mean, that is really heartwarming to hear, because I believe if you're a film out of England and you're supposed to be a Cockney and you're speaking in like King Charles to be, then it just doesn't rhyme. And if you're from the deep South in America and you're speaking like a New Yorker, they can tell the difference. So it's just to learn. So I like this kind of engagement. That engagement is really, really exciting. Really, really exciting.
Yes.
So, Ikenna, tell me, how does a movie go from an idea to be screened at your festival?
Well, from what I know, creative. The passion that we have is really, really to creators. Nowadays you have one thing. So you have people who are writers just to get their idea and bring it to life, So, they write the script and they go around, trying to find, okay, how do I raise the money to make this film? Because making a film it costs millions of naira. It's not a small project, but these are passion projects. Creatives, that is how we operate. The passion really just drives us. So they do all the work, maybe get partnerships, maybe raise funding here and there, maybe possibly. In old Nollywood, it was really maybe your relatives. It was traders. It was traders. That's why in the back in the day, here Opi Weka, this, that, Opi Weka and the traders and all each other really did contribute a lot to Nollywood, because they took the risks, they sold land, they put their capital in making these films, and that's how it's evolved. And nowadays, creatives are raising money. There are international sources to raise money these days. And these days, there's quite a lot of training on business and filmmaking, so that you can start even in the early days. planning how to, the project to be financially viable. So you raise money maybe from relatives, maybe from an investor, or you partner with a producer who comes find money, and you start to think, okay, who's the actor who's best going to bring this to life, and the producer will now start to look at, okay, at the end, how the producer is not only there to help you make the film, the producer is also thinking, how do we sell this when we make it?
Absolutely.
Do we partner with the cinema chain? If you do get a deal with the cinema chain is asking you, okay, who are your A-list stars? Who are the A-list stars? Because there are certain faces they do believe draw people into the cinema to see films. So things like that considerations like that going to beyond your story. Who will bring the star power to attract the audience, things like that. And at the end of the day, you recruit, like we spoke about earlier, a director of photography, that's the DP. You decide, okay, it might be the director who wrote the story. Sometimes it's even the producer who pays a writer to write. And now has to decide, okay, which director do I like to work with on this? Who's going to give me what I require from the story? And they can recruit the director. Also, the level of money available to you determines, is it a big director? Is it an upcoming guy? Is it, things like that, because everybody has what they bring to the table. So, so that's how, you recruit those guys. There are a lot of guys in the value chain. There's the art director who really gives you the look and feel of the film. I mean, if it's a horror film, it has to be dark,
Yeah.
If it's a comedy, there has to be, the look and feel has to be light and hearty and things like that, So a lot of thought does go into making, what you see, like I say, motion pictures, So, they put together a crew for the film and decide on locations, find locations and things like that, and they get to work, do a schedule, decide on the budget and do the actual shooting of the film. Then when that finishes, you now go to what you call post-production. Post-production is now where you now go and sit down and edit the film into a proper coherent story, because in making the films aren't just shot the way the story is told.
Yeah.
There's a lot of planning. Even your cost, even the budget you have will decide how you shoot your story, So in post-production, the director will sit down with the producer and the editors and piece that story together, in a flow that works. The art director will have things, have some work in there. Then they start talking about things like coloring, sound design, and so yeah, so it's a lot of work that does happen. A lot of productions. I mean, in the more evolved economies, productions go 3-4 years.
3-4
in our
years.
side of the country.
Wow.
Yes, in our side of the country. For instance, we just had a Brazilian delegation. We just hosted in Lagos about 3 weeks ago, and in Brazil, because filmmaking costs a lot of money in Brazil because of the economy, equipment, and all that, they have to build over 3-4 years to raise the budget of money they require to shoot. But in Nigeria, we don't operate like that. Our industry is born out of necessity. These are people who just picked up camcorders and things and started just making movies, So we don't have that kind of luxury to sit down for 3-4 years and be raising money, Uh-huh. So
let me ask you, how did they get their money back? If they spend 3-4 years raising the money, how long do they spend making their money back?
So what it is that they make less. Because of this, they make less films.
Okay.
And make these films, we're talking about millions of dollars in their case. When they make these films, they have outlets, For instance, in the city of Sao Paulo, they have 345 screens alone. 345 screens that can show this film. In Nigeria as a whole, we're not talking about Sao Paulo is one city in Brazil. Nigeria as a whole doesn't have 345 screens. You understand? So that infrastructure they have, if cinema just puts that film on 345 screens in Sao Paulo alone and the rest of Brazil, that money will be made back, you know? But in our own client, we make movies for less money, and we've really turned it into an art, to make movies for less money. So these are some of the things they are interested in coming to learn from us. How do we, because we make a lot of content, how do we make this content quickly and turn it around quickly and still have it make money? Because for their population, it's important because they need to pull a lot of people out of poverty. So you see how it connects to economics and development and all that. Yeah, they have 54% of people who are Black in their country, and they want these people involved, and and they have very little females in the industry. So if you bring a production to Brazil, for instance, there are incentives they give you. If you bring, for instance, $1 million in investment to shoot a film, you get back $300,000. They give you 30% back, and they can further give you incentives if you have a Brazilian female director on that production, or a Black actress, actor, director, whatever. So on our side, we made it an art form. Within a month, we can turn out a film. So so that's what it takes. That's what it takes to make a film. You now make the film, then post-production, finish up, then you start to, a lot of creatives are just passionate. Some people go through this process and don't have a clue how they're going to market this film. So they go through all these problems and come out, they have a film. But a cinema thinks it's not commercial enough. It doesn't have actors and actresses. It is not going to sell. You understand? Yeah. So we can't take it. So now what are my options? How do I do? So certain people, they don't, as they've made this passion project and they're just sitting on it and they don't know what to do, So this is where coming to a festival helps you. If you put that film into a festival, festivals have grown so much these days that only on the festival circuit, that film can tour for 2 years, and you're going from country to country, and audiences worldwide can see that film. So, for instance, last year, we had Amazon Prime Video as one of our partners, and we were able to work out the deal where we could directly from the festival license films. We licensed 5 films to Prime Video last year, So this, which was a really big triumph for us, because this was some of the opportunities we wanted to give our filmmakers. You have this lovely project, you've come to this festival, and we can plug you directly with a distributor, and plug you directly to a streaming platform, and you can make the money comes to you directly, So these are the things that those opportunities exist in the festival. And just beyond things like that, coming there, you can meet other producers, other filmmakers who have connections. You can meet financing, bodies, you can meet banks, you can meet all sorts of people in the festival that can help you develop, even if it's just the story that you have. That festival circuit helps you to kind of, at the end of the day, help you design a structure, find help here and there to get that your project out or get it made in the first place. So that's the that's the value that Afri and all the festivals.
The festivals bring. Hmm.
Yeah.
Because from what you've said, my goodness, the amount of money you have to put in and the time you have to spend to to create, even if it's a passion project. I mean, if it just says, it's like you write a book and you just keep it on your laptop.
Shelf. Yeah, laptop, yes.
Yeah, yes. It's just sitting down there. So for someone to get out there, it's once you've done it, go network, make connections, sell yourself.
Exactly.
And somebody had said yesterday we were having a conversation about tech and the gender code in tech, whether how we can crack it. And he's into angel investing and venture capital. And he said, interestingly, many women don't come out to talk, to tell their stories. But I have found that from talking to entrepreneurs for almost 2 years on this Unplugged program, I find that many people don't want to tell their stories, whether they're creative entrepreneurs or they're in other areas. They're like, okay, let me just stay in this corner. But what you are saying very clearly, and it relates not just to the film industry, but also to any industry. Don't be shy. Get up and tell your story.
Yeah. I mean, we have all different types of people. The people who are introverted, they're extroverts, there are people who like their own company, even creatives, certain creatives are like that. They write stories and on their laptops, But what coming out to a festival, be it even just not a film one or a tech one, like you're talking about, is that you go in there and you meet people who are like you, and you see, okay, this guy this is the work that's been able to do. I can connect to this person and build, so there's inspiration that you can get just going out there, seeing people are similar to you, who have the same stories as you do, and the resources are right there in front of you. I mean, if you're a little director and you just meet this small short film, you're at the festival and you're seeing that big star, the one that the cinema told is not in your film, and you didn't have a way before to reach this person. But at the festival, you're going to have direct access to meet the person and say, please, I have this project, this, that. I'd like for you to, because even as actors, they do passion projects as well. They have their own projects, that they're trying to raise money to do, or they're just trying to get done, Some of them want to be behind the camera, not always in front. They want to transition. So they want to meet the directors as well, producers as well, So it's really, really, over the years of doing a free, the value that it brings is something that, is something that we're very, very, very proud of. Yeah.
I'm excited just listening to it. And I'd like to ask, where do you where's your location? I know you started in Port Harcourt, but do you stay in Nigeria or is it all over Africa where you have the...
No, it's based, the thing is, what we've learned when we started, it was in Port Harcourt, but that was because the first partner we had was River State government. But with everything that is government, it's not sustainable because people change in government, somebody is fired or loses their job being governor or something, and that funding is gone. So, over the years we did Port Harcourt, we did Calabar for 2 years. And after 2 years in Calabar, we realized that for sustainability, it was going to be best to just, government funding wasn't sustainable for Lagos, because at Lagos there was the hub and a thriving industry. Something else we learned is that big film festivals are, are built on an industry. So for instance, is built on an industry, a thriving industry. That Nollywood base there, So that's really what that's how we kind of evolved. So we're Lagos based, and yeah.
Okay, so people come from all over the world to Africa, to Lagos.
Yes, from all over the world. Last year we had a film from Mongolia. 2 female filmmakers as well from Mongolia.
I was about to ask a silly question, like, is that in Africa? My brain had a fog for a minute.
You asked me a question before, just before we started talking live, where you said, okay, what is the brand? What is the difference like?
I'm actually going to go to that. Yes. What's the brand?
Yeah. So, right off the bat, we didn't want to be, everything to everybody, So our focus was African filmmakers and the African diaspora.
Okay.
But we're an international film festival. So even though you're going to program African films, you're still going to have maybe a panorama section where you still have the best of international films showing alongside that. Because you're also teaching younger people. You're not only just celebrating films and filmmakers, you're teaching younger filmmakers. So you have to be side by side with the international counterparts, and that bridge between the African and international, it's an important bridge because that audience is massive, So over the years, this is something we deliberately tried to foster, So that's it. So we do have films who come from all over the world, even though our programming is primarily for Africa and African diaspora.
Okay. So your brand, how's your brand different from, how's Africa different from like the Cairo International Film Festival or the Pan-African Film Festival in Ouagadougou or South African International Film Festival? What's the difference? What do you bring to the table that these other ones don't bring, or how do you complement each other?
Okay, for instance, in building a free, we did go to a lot of those festivals, and what we took away is that festivals sometimes can be too intellectual.
Okay.
It can be too intellectual. The film festivals, you go, everybody's talking about cinema. I mean, cinema is essentially like looking at filmmaking, academically, So some of them are too academic. There's this discourse between what you call pop cinema and art house cinema.
Mm-hmm.
The French represent art house cinema, and Nigeria, for instance, Nollywood represents pop cinema. That's how the intellectuals in the film industry, the purists, did not see Nigeria as cinema at all. You understand? They just, it's some kind of filmmaking, but it's not cinema. Until recently, I'm telling you.
Interesting.
Yeah, so for us, it was important because in Africa, it was like the Ouagadougou. Ouagadougou is over 50 years. That festival is hosted by the Burkina Faso government. It's over 50 years, and it's one of the biggest ceremonies. Yeah, I mean, you have the Cairo International Film Festival, where a lot of the programming is Arab films, Egypt and Arab countries. You understand? Then, I mean, the South Africans, a lot of, international, there's a lot of international focus, but mixed with South African film, So for us, it was important that we had this industry that people are saying is the third biggest in the world. You understand? And there was no festival in West Africa You understand? Because I
Yeah.
mean, Burkina Faso is West Africa, but it's essentially for French filmmakers.
French, yeah, yes.
French-speaking country, it's hugely for French filmmakers. So we needed something in English-speaking West Africa that was big, and there was a big showcase that could rival and perhaps do as much or even better than these old festivals had been in Africa. And in building that, we looked at a few things. In Cannes Film Festival, you have the film thing going. There's a big film market going, and there's a big social calendar around this. So it just draws in a lot of people. So we realized off the jump that to draw in the audience, I mean, the audience is not, I mean, you have filmmakers making films, but if you want an audience, you have to draw people in from everywhere. So we deliberately started a social calendar around, those programs, the film program and the industry program at all, which has become a mainstay in Afrif. And Afrif is known for that. So Afrif is regarded as a very vibrant festival to come to, very colorful, very, young, energetic people, So that's the difference for Afrif. A lot of festivals you go to, very academic, very boring. You have an opening ceremony, drink a little wine, you go and see the screening and you go and sleep. That's it, but you're coming to Afrif is 7 days. You're going to have a lot of social events. You're going to party. And what we found out is that the business happens during the social events.
Yeah.
That's where the connections are made.
Yeah.
That's where those connections are made. So that's where the actual business is done. Yeah. So that's it. So nowadays you can refer to FIFA as the most vibrant film festival in Africa, and everybody will agree with you.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I hope. When does it take place?
Every November.
Every November.
This year is 5th, 11th. Yes.
Okay.
This year is 5th to the 11th of November. Yeah.
If I'm in Lagos, I'll drop by. I'll drop by.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
So, do you give awards? I know, like a film to be screened at Cannes is a big deal. So, is a film to be screened at Afrif? Is it a big deal? And do you get awards? I think Cannes has is it Golden Lion or something like that? I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing it up.
Yeah. The Afrif Globe Awards is something that we're building as well. It's not as big as the Cannes Lions now, but yeah, it's not as big as the Palme d'Or.
Palme d'Or, yes.
Yeah. But it's getting there. The feedback we're getting from filmmakers. I had filmmakers last year who came from the north, and they practically came with their whole crew. And and they said to me, "Look, Afrif is big for us.
The north of Nigeria."
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of feedback is that people are beginning to consider Afrif as that festival, to go to. So when you select films, there's a lot of feedback. My film was selected for Afrif. My film was selected for Afrif. We do have a film competition, so we do give awards. So we have awards. We have an award ceremony called Afrif Globe Awards. That we give, and where we do give awards to filmmakers. Yes.
Hey, I mean, this is all very, very, very interesting. I mean, I was going to ask you what are the other benefits, but you've covered that very, 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 very extensively. Somebody had shared a question. They said, and maybe this is one of those what did you call them? The art house. Somebody from the art house. They said a film historian called Jerry Beck. I'll hold up my hand and say I don't know Jerry Beck. I did not check into this one. Yeah. Someone sent in a question. They said, film historians like Jerry Beck do not consider film festivals as official releases of the film. Is a film festival where you go to release a film for the first time, or can it be released somewhere and then come to a festival?
Yeah, there's a point to that. Yeah, there's a point to that, because in the business of film, festivals are not really considered official releases. You understand? An official release will be maybe like a theatrical release. Okay, it went to cinema today. You understand? So it was released in cinema, so it's an official release. It was released on television, so it's an official release. It was released on a streaming service. You know, so those traditional film business outlets are considered the release points, really. But festivals, nowadays they are, nowadays if you go on things like IMDb and a few of the the sites who keep records of films, film festival releases are beginning to be considered official releases. So, but I know that in the business side, where, for instance, we're dealing with streamers and things like that, they don't really they consider it as a way to just get some audience to see, test the film. A festival reaction kind of gives you an idea how the film will do. That's why a lot of distributors and people who market films go to festivals, because you have an audience and that film can be tested with that audience, and you can say, okay, I'm going to buy this film. So that's what also happens in festivals. A lot of people like the Amazons and the Netflix, they do license films or buy films at festivals because they've seen an audience reaction, and they cannot take it and officially gonna go and release it on their platform. Yeah.
So this thing is just really
Yeah.
a market, buying and selling and
Yes.
selling yourself as hard. But you have to have a good product. You have to have a great product.
Exactly.
Okay. So, what are the criteria for? We are almost winding down now. So let me ask the few questions that I have for myself, not other people's questions. What criteria would do you have for movies to be screened at AFRIF? I mean, submission. The submission automatically mean that your movie will be screened.
No. For instance, we last year we got about 4,000 films. We averagely get about 4,000. Averagely every year we clock about 4,000 films, but it's not physically possible. It's not physically possible to screen 4,000 films.
Mm.
So, I mean, we run for about 7 days. So we screen, the highest we normally screen is maybe about 150 films.
That's a lot,
So
though.
our program has to be between 100 and 150 films every year. But also it's not that you get 4,000 films then everything makes sense. A lot of it, it's a lot of it are just experiments people do. I'll just submit to you and things like that that are not actually properly. So every category has criteria. The short film has to be a certain length. The feature film has to be a certain length. Documentary, things like that. You know, then the little other things that we ask for. That if you submit a film, it has to have an electronic press kit. Electronic press kit means it needs to have a synopsis, it needs to have a poster, it needs to have stills from the film, because as a festival, if we select that film, we're going to do a brochure, do some marketing, and tell the audience, these are the films we are going to show. If your film doesn't have those things, it can't be done. So if your film doesn't, and nobody's there to see your film. So as festivals, we're making sure that filmmakers understand the importance of, if you create a film, you take the time to create an EPK for it. Simple electronic press pictures from the film, things like that. All that information.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Before I ask you, my last question will be okay. Let me ask you, what do you believe is the future for Africa? When you look down the line, what's the future for Africa? Where are you headed in the next? You'll be 13 this year, I guess.
Yeah.
You'll be 13 this year.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look down
For
the
us,
line, yeah.
Yeah. Our vision really has always been to build the biggest film festival, biggest film showcase in the world.
Oh.
So that's what we're working towards, and we're organically, slowly but surely growing. Yeah. We're very happy nowadays. We're part of that circuit, film festival circuit on the calendar. You know that every November there's a film festival in Lagos. In the international circuit, there's a film festival in Lagos. In December, there's one in Dubai. In May, there's one in France. In September, there's Toronto. Things like that. So for a filmmaker, that calendar is very important. And you can use it to plan and say, okay, if my film goes to the Berlinale in February, goes to Cannes in May, goes to Toronto in September, and goes to Afrique. If I do these 4 film festivals, there's no way the audience
Something must
worldwide.
Drop. Something must drop. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the smart people really plan with those circuits. Yeah.
One thing that has come through for me, speaking to different people in your world, and it's been such a privilege being in your world, is that it is extremely financially intensive, extremely, because you have to take
Yes.
yourself to all these festivals.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of it is that if your film is selected in competition in most of these festivals, all your costs are covered.
Ah, okay.
If you submit a film to a festival and it's selected, especially if it's selected in competition, then the festival covers for you to come to the festival. If sometimes festivals have, like us, we do have a program that's outside competition. If you're selected there, we do have support for filmmakers to come, but not for everybody. So I mean, the bigger festivals who have proper money can cover everybody. Yeah, but most festivals have support for filmmakers, travel, ticket, accommodation, things like that. Yeah.
So for aspiring filmmakers, it's clear to me, it has always been clear to me, but all clearer now, that this is not a business for dropouts or for people who have nothing better to do. The film business, it's in fact the entire creative economy. It's a serious business. So for people who are aspiring to come into this world and maybe start their own film festival, however small it might be, regional, local, what would your advice be to them?
My advice is to come to festivals like Afif. There are few festivals in Nigeria. It doesn't have to be, doesn't particularly have to be Afif. There's the festivals. It's I think next month there's a Coal City Film Festival in Enugu. New festival, about 3 or 4 years old, but doing great things. So you come and you pick up the ideas of, I remember back in the day in our Calabar days, one of the filmmakers from Cameroon came and said, my country would really benefit from something like this. And because we're in the English speaking part of Cameroon, we don't get as much as the French side. So this would really work for us. And we kind of inspired him to start the Cameroon International Film Festival, So yeah, a couple of other people as well. Young man who's doing a film festival in Uguta, in his hometown in Uguta. That went through our training process, was one of the kids who were privileged to be sent abroad for training by a few. Yeah. So it's always good to learn from the existing structure that other people have, and it's not something that you just venture into because it's not, it's structured. For instance, like an NGO, it's not for profit.
Mm.
So if you're going into to make money, you're not going to make money. It's not possible. So, yeah. So but structures like these are important because they do, there's a lot of advocacy work that is done to support filmmakers, to support creatives. We're at the forefront of when Goodluck Jonathan's government, when the 3 billion naira was invested in the entertainment industry, we're at the forefront of those discussions. We're still at the forefront of discussions for an uh, African film fund. And
Yeah.
so you know, there's a lot of work that we do really basically to strengthen the industry and allow talents to blossom, really.
Now, sorry, this just came into my mind. When you spoke about the Ouagadougou and you talked about the film festival in Burkina Faso, and you spoke about the fact that it's been on for almost 5 decades or more right now, you
Yeah.
know, and I was just thinking, since Afrif is part of this, you're at the table talking about the need to have a fund. How can we, how can you, how can creatives come together and ensure that there are these buckets of money that people can access to make better movies, tell better stories? Because I tell you, part of, if we can tell our stories better. Now, Chris O'Day, I'm sure you know Chris O'Day. Chris O'Day mentioned something to me. He said, have you noticed that in all these Marvel comics and stuff like that, they usually use the colors blue, white, and then red?
Yes.
I said, yeah. I noticed. I said, whose flag has those colors?
No,
Mostly
because
American
you
flag.
have to understand, you have to
You know?
understand the history. Those comics started during World War II. Those comics
Okay.
companies were really making stories to inspire the soldiers fighting in the World War.
I
So the
see.
Captain Americas and things like that were specifically, superhuman powers and things were attributes that, Wonder Woman, all those things. That's why their stories are tied to World War II, you know. So those colors are specifically American flag colors, you
Yes.
know. And that's psyche, which at the end of the day, that's what has built into this super. When they think of America, think about superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what cinema. That's what I mean. That's how for instance, over the last few years, we've had this discussion about changing the narrative in Africa because even bodies like the Ford Foundation realize that it's dangerous to be portraying Africa as this land of strife and war and hunger and all that. Meanwhile, Africa is, there's war and strife. I mean, look at Ukraine. There's war and strife in Europe as we speak.
Everywhere. Oh, yeah.
So it's not Africa's singular story, So as filmmakers, we have to be conscious of that, and be, making films that speak to our modern day. For instance, about 2 years ago, we had a program, and it was really about new voices in cinema. And part of our program in that year, we had films like in sci-fi, African films that are sci-fi films, films that are talking about mental health. People don't know that mental health is a big issue in Africa. You understand? Nowadays, it's a big issue. So
It's
there's
home
a lot.
trouble. It's not mental health. We call it home trouble. Not,
You know,
but I agree with you. I agree with you.
you know.
Absolutely.
So these new narratives. Back in the day, we used to think, okay, mental health is for rich people. You
Abi?
understand? Uh-huh. So maybe Africa
No,
is
no,
rich. Yeah.
no. I'll tell you. I will tell you. I'll hold up my hand and tell you that I used to think that way until my sister had a driver who I had seen him like 2 weeks before. He drove us from Port Harcourt to Lagos. And about 2 weeks after that, he killed himself.
Yes, you can imagine.
You know, I was in shock. I mean, I kept asking my sister, what happened? Did you see any sign? What happened? You've spoken to the family. Was there anything going wrong? And she said there was nothing. He wasn't owing money, he wasn't doing anything. And that is when, truthfully, this was about 6 years or so ago. That's when I stopped saying, "Oh no, we don't have these issues." You know,
Exactly.
yeah, it's so real. It's so real.
Yeah.
It's so real.
So it's important, So like we said, there are a lot of issues that we're dealing with nowadays. You know, Nigeria with all this ethnicity divide and things like that. Filmmakers, by next year, especially us in the film field, we see these stories that are speaking to all these issues, elections. Last year, one of our closing films had to deal with the SARS problem. So a lot of films are made, but we need to start to understand that as a country, that there's a deliberate way to portray your country with your films. But that's something you build as a government and allow by setting up a fund, you tie it to positive narratives, for instance, and challenge filmmakers and say, okay, this fund is available to access to make films, but is for positive narratives about Nigeria. And you will see that within the next 5 to 10 years, just people's psyche, just by the films that will be released,
yes,
start to change. Is this how Nigeria is? But that's what the West have understood from time. Even with the World War films, all the war films they made, America won all.
Oh.
The Vietnam War, America considered that it lost that war, but you never see an American Vietnam War film that gives you any that sentiment. You understand? So they've used their cinema to build up this persona where the world power, where the world, and really you can't challenge it, but that's how you grow up. America is the land of the free.
Oh yeah.
It's the land of the brave and the free.
Free, yes.
That's how you grow up, Yes. I'll give you an example. A film in the 90s called Independence Day was one of the big blockbuster films by
I watched it.
What's his name? Will Smith. At the end, it's a film about alien invasion of the world. And as the Americans, they're the ones that lead the charge and defeat the enemies, the aliens. At the end of the film, where they were showing people coming out from where they hid, the Indians, he came out from all the places they hid. This one, the shots for Africa in the end of that film was Bushmen coming out from the bush.
Oh dear.
You understand?
Yeah.
These are so if you watch that film as an American, in your mind, Africans live in the bush. You understand?
Yes.
All those things. You would think Africa is the bush and only the animals there. You understand? And that's how Africa was portrayed in a film that was a sci-fi film, had aliens in it, and we were still
coming from the bush. Interesting.
You understand? Yeah.
I do.
So cinema has a lot of power to change, a lot of things, if we're deliberate about it.
Well, I'm a very optimistic Nigerian, and I'm very excited about what you guys are doing in the film industry. I'm excited about AFRIF and the other festivals in Nigeria, and what you do to enhance the value chain, the entire, and build the ecosystem to be more robust. So I promise you this, I believe I'll be in Lagos, God willing, first week of November, and I shall reach you before then.
Please.
And yes, and let you know, so that I can come back and tell my people that yes, it's indeed, yes. Well, thank you
Love
so much, Ikenna. Thank
love
you. This has been, for me, a master class. I keep learning and learning. And I hope that if we come back to you, you accept to be our guest on Unplugged.
I'm always, it's important that we're telling the stories and educating our people, and it's important to share. So I'm very happy. Anytime you call on me, I'm available.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And bye for now. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
It's really been a pleasure. Bye. So, guys, we'll see you next week when we round up the series on lights, camera, and action when we talk to a director, Tolu Ajayi. Watch out for it. It's going to be another banger. Take care and see you next week.